Hey, good evening. Hello. My name is Richard, and I'm going to be your host this evening at Green Meetup or Business Meetup. I'd like to tell you just the basics, what this Green Meetup or Business Meetup is. It's kind of a personal story, because I had the friends who I could go out and have a few beers with, and there were the colleagues and business partners with whom I could talk about serious topics. But there was a gap between these two groups of people, and into this gap came Green Meetup and Business Meetup as well. I'm very happy that so many of us are here this evening, because that means there's a so-called market pool for events or evenings like this. And this evening, Szaky, the founder and CEO of TerraCycle, is going to be our guest speaker. And he has like an hour and a half to tell us the story of TerraCycle. Please do prepare with questions, because it's the reason why he's here, and is the reason why you came to this evening, to this event, to have him answer your questions. It's a really valuable thing when such a person cares about you so much that he answers. After the event, we plan to just mingle, eat all the pizzas, drink all the drinks we have, and after that we're gonna go around in the city on the nearby streets, and whoever has this sticker on them, please just do go up to them and start talking, because you have a common interest. That's why you came to this event. So I guess now it's time for Tom to start, and time for me to just shut up and let him talk. Tom, where are you? Thank you.
So kérték, angolul beszélek, so I'm going to switch to English, but in questions you can ask in Hungarian or English either way. What I would also recommend is, of course, we'll answer as many questions as you have at the very end, but please, as I go and tell you the story of TerraCycle and talk to you about the theory of garbage, please, if you have a question as we go, ask. Let's make it as open and a experience as possible. Just raise your hand, and if I don't see you because the lights, just please wave and jump and scream. Okay, so what I want to talk to you about today is a little bit about how TerraCycle came to be, sort of my journey in this whole process, and then also in parallel talk to you about the idea of garbage, because TerraCycle, if you may know it, is a social business. We're now 11 years old as a company. We're about 120 or 25 employees around the world, even 10 people here in our office in Budapest. And we work in 26 countries around the world, including Hungary, to make things that are not recyclable, recyclable. For example, here in Hungary, we collect flexible chip packaging, all the way to even used cigarette butts, and are able to have them recycled. And it's not just here, but in Japan, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, US, Brazil, so on and so forth. So, before getting into the whole story, I want to play you a little video that gives you a little bit of context into what this whole idea is about. I was a freshman at Princeton, and I really had the intention of starting a social business. But I dropped out of school 8 years ago because I just fell in love with the concept of garbage. Our major global solution for garbage? Put it in a pile, or burn it. These are not sophisticated solutions. And that's how TerraCycle came to be, to help eliminate the idea of waste by making things that are non-recyclable, recyclable. Can a plastic bag technically be recycled? 100%. Can a candy wrapper? 100%. And we do it. We're the biggest collector and processor of wrappers, chip bags, and other flexible packaging in the world. But you need a unique system, because on its own, the economics don't work. Our collectors are the most vital aspect of our business. We have close to 26 million people sending us this waste. And that whole cost is funded by major consumer product companies because they found that the public was craving a solution to their waste. What is that?
Fire hose. We were thinking of accessories.
Fire hose popper.
Our team of scientists and our team of designers look at every type of waste stream and identify what are the solutions for each one, because really each type of garbage has a different heartbeat. Juice pouches become backpacks. Chip bags can melt into an injection moldable plastic, and with dirty diapers, the superabsorbent polymer ends up being used in the farming industry, so the soil has better water retention, and the plastic is made into something like a park bench. We have evaluated every consumer waste stream, and every type of garbage has a solution. Now, of course, if we stopped buying stuff, none of these problems would exist. We are on a consumption fix. Our grandparents, they had way less stuff. When you bought a table, you would buy it with an intention of having it passed down to your kids and their kids and so on. Then we went out of the Great Depression, we went into the biggest global war we have ever seen, and we wanted to rebound from that. The idea of consumption and the idea of disposable products solved the failure in the economy. I don't think TerraCycle would have succeeded 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but we're tapping into this desire that is so deep amongst everyone to do the right environmental thing. We're collecting millions of pieces of waste every day. And so while people are addicted to consumption, so am I, we are willing to try to solve it. So this gives you just a little bit of a taste into what TerraCycle is all about. So with a social business, you know, in a normal business environment, when you ask someone, what's the purpose of business? Go to any business school and ask a student, they'll probably say the purpose of business is to produce as much profit for shareholders as possible. That's the reason it exists. Now, that may be the case in classic business, but the challenge with that point of view is that justifies potentially very bad decisions being made for the sake of profit. And I've seen this play out many, many, many times. A major consumer product company recently chose to move away from recyclable packaging because it would cost them $10 million less every year to produce that package. And this is when you only serve profit, there's very easy ways to justify really bad decisions. Now, I think social business is a little bit different. TerraCycle is an example of that. There's many others out there. Our focus is not profit. Our focus is impact. So how much waste do we collect and process is our number one goal. Last year, we collected 2.5 billion pieces of garbage, or 50 million kilos, to give you a sense of scale. The second most important for us is social impact. How many people do we engage? Here in Hungary, I think there's 120,000 people collecting in our platform. Around the world, it's 60 million people. And when people collect waste, they actually even get a small donation for every piece of waste collected. So we give away close to $3 to $7 million every year in these donations. And then, where does profit fit in? I think the purpose of business, personally, has nothing to do with profit. I think the purpose of business is what we create as a product or what we produce as a service, what function we serve in society. Profit is really an indicator of health. It's like how much fat we have on our bones. You know, if you're very thin and you're very unprofitable, then you'll probably starve to death one day and go bankrupt. But if you're profitable, do you need to have excess of profitability? The way we believe it is we limit our profit to 1% of our revenue, reinvest everything else into growing the business so we can grow our impact, and then if we've done all that, then we can even lower our prices. So, in understanding purpose in a social business, I think is the core focus of the business. It's not profit, it's what is it do. For TerraCycle, the question we've always asked ourselves is, what is garbage? And I want to talk about this as I go so you can see how we built the theory of garbage around our business. So the first thing, we'll get all the negatives out of the way. Garbage is not a natural idea. It doesn't exist in nature in any capacity. You know, we learned this in elementary school. If you watch The Lion King and The Great Circle of Life, we know that every output of one system is the input for the next system. You know, a leaf falls off a tree, that's food for microorganisms. The microorganism's excrement is food for a plant, and so on and so on. So where does garbage exist? It's exclusively in the human system. And I would argue, as you sort of saw a little bit in that video, that it's a very, very new concept. It's not been around for more than 100 years in its modern form. If you think about it, and how long ago is 100 years? Maybe our great-grandparents were alive 100 years ago? Not that many generations back. 100 years ago, two things didn't exist which exist today and have created garbage. First, products, before the advent of plastics and complex materials, were made from wood, cotton, and metals. All these things are easy for nature to solve because they're very natural. Today, and right around the turn of the century, we invented plastics. And now when you look around even this room, most of the objects in this room, everything will become garbage one day, but most of the objects are synthetic. The cushions you're sitting on are made from foam, which is a plastic material. Most of our shoes are plastic. This is almost all plastic. If you're wearing spandex or nylon or anything like that, that's plastic as well. And then look at the cameras, look at the electronics. Everything is made from complex materials that nature doesn't know what to do with. Then you compound that by this love of purchasing, this love of consumerism. You know, today if you ask someone, what do you aspire to if you're a big business person, people aspire to having 3 houses, having 10 cars, having 1 private plane. That's what everyone wants to get to. And then we value our worth, our role in society by how much objects we've accumulated. If you compare statistically, I just had a book, my second book just got published about a month ago called Outsmart Waste. It's actually going to be published here in Hungary too in about 6 months or so. I don't know what title they're going to use. But one of the interesting statistics that I found in researching that book is if you compare someone today, doesn't matter what country they're in, this is not an American question, this is a global question, and you compare how much people buy today, compared to how much people bought 100 years ago, today we buy 10 times more stuff by weight than we did 100 years ago. Now that's, 100 years ago we had to eat food, we had to have clothing to keep ourselves warm, and we had to have a roof over our head. So what changed? We still buy the food, probably the same amount of food, we probably still buy clothing, probably just a lot more now, and if you look at it, the 9x increase in consumption that has occurred in the past 100 years is only stuff that we buy to make ourselves feel good. By definition, that 9x extra stuff cannot be things we buy to survive, which is what we bought before. And not only that, then you combine that with the population increase in the world. In the past 100 years, the population has gone up 7 times. So 7 times increase in population, 10 times increase in purchasing means 70 times more garbage that the human species produces today than it did 100 years ago. And those are the two things that create the concept of waste: consumption and complex materials coming together. So let's talk about the problem, just so we can really understand it. The total garbage problem in the world today is 5 billion tons a year. A ton is 2,000 pounds or 1,000 kilos, so you can put that into perspective. Still today, 25% of all the world's garbage ends up in our water, in our oceans. Now, have you heard of the Pacific Garbage Gyre? Is that a concept that has come, you guys are aware of?
Yes.
Has anyone been there? Anyone? If you have, you just raise your hand really or yell out. Okay, I've been there myself. And it turns out, first, there's not one garbage gyre, there's 5. Because every ocean gyre in the planet is a garbage gyre because the material accumulates towards the center. A garbage gyre is as big as the state of Texas, which in European perspective is as big as all of Western Europe together. Each. So there's 5 of them. Then each of those are many meters deep. And they don't look like these photos. That's a bird that ate some stuff off a beach. And that's an end of a river in Rio. I put these photos up because they, inspire what garbage does. But the garbage gyre, what happens is these plastics have broken down into such tiny little pieces that you couldn't see it. You have to take a cup, and when you look at the cup of water, it just looks milky instead of clear. And these microparticles, because that's what happens to plastic, it doesn't go away. It just breaks into smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller pieces. So that's where 25% goes. And I don't know what the answer to that will be. It's a multi-trillion-dollar question. So where does the rest go? 5% is recycled around the world. There's recycling here in Hungary, there's recycling everywhere in the world, and that accounts for about 5% of the waste. So there's 70% left over. 25 in the oceans, 5 recycled. The other balance goes either it is burned, which is very popular in Germany. Germany burns 70% of its garbage. Japan burns 70% of its garbage. Where you see burning becoming very predominant is countries that have a lot of money and countries that have very high populations and low land area. That's where it's important to put incineration facilities. Everywhere else around the world, like here, it's burying. Now the challenge with burning or burying our garbage is that it views it as a negative. It views it as a problem, as a liability, something that you want to pay to get rid of, because you have to pay to do these things. It doesn't view garbage like nature does, which is something of value. And I think that's the first and foremost biggest issue in this whole garbage question, is we see it as a problem when we should look at it as ideally a positive. Now the other reason that we end up burning or burying our garbage is the complexity of garbage. If you think about our closest relatives, if you believe in the idea of evolution, is a chimpanzee. Now, chimpanzees have three outputs, three things that they excrete. One is carbon dioxide when they breathe, just like we are today. The second is what they put in the toilet, poop and pee and whatever else. And the third is body parts, hair, skin, and then one day the body of the animal itself. Now, we have those three things. We breathe, we use the toilet, at least most of us, and we also cut our hair, some of us, and cut our nails and so on. But in addition to those three categories, we have 300 extra categories of garbage. And a category being as big as cosmetics, which is very complicated in its own right. Lipstick, mascara, compacts, all these things are very, very different. So because of this wild and big range of waste, when we mix it all together, it's uneconomical to do anything except burn it or bury it, because it's so crazy complicated how many materials are inside. Now, I want to talk about the big white elephant in the room, if you will, because the answer to garbage is not TerraCycle, and it's not even any other recycling company that's alive today or ever will be alive. Because the reason garbage exists is because we buy things. And what we really have to reflect on, if this is a problem that is important to you, is how do you buy differently? Because a recycling solution, like TerraCycle, is an answer to a problem. But the real question isn't how do you fix the problem, it's how do you never have the problem to begin with. That's a much easier way to solve the issue. And the way to do that is to buy differently. And this is the way to do it. The simplest one is at the very bottom, it's to buy consciously. What I mean about this is just be aware that everything you buy will become garbage. I was just shopping this morning, I had to buy some groceries, they're right there. One of the easy things is instead of putting all the apples and the pears and the onions in those bags, the plastic bags, and then weighing them, just put them all in the bag and never have a bag to begin with. Or when instead of buying frozen food that it comes in, plastic bags, buy just fresh peas, or whatever the question may be, but be conscious in your buying. The next then gets a little bit more profound. Instead of buying disposable, buy durable. So instead of buying a cheap plastic lighter that's going to run out of lighter fluid and then you have to throw it out, why don't you buy a nice expensive gold lighter or a nice lighter that's going to last for many, many, many years. Hopefully if you light someone's cigarette, the girl you light it for, she'll be even more interested in you because you have a nice, beautiful lighter. And you can maybe give it to your children and so on. It's going to be more expensive, no question, but it's going to, in the long run, save you money and give you a better experience all the way through. And that can happen in anything, pens, razor blades, whatever. Now, if you're willing to agree to the idea of buying durable, so high-quality products instead of low-quality shit that you're going to throw out all the time, then go to the next step above that, which is buy used. Because if it's available durable, it must be available used. It's by definition, it won't be durable unless it is available used. And the very best thing of all is the very top, which is just simply stop buying. That is, I just want to mention, because I'm going to talk a lot now about what we do, but the answer isn't what we do. The answer is this, because we're the guilty people here. We as consumers vote for more of this stuff to be created every day by buying it. So let me go into the story. That's a little bit on the theory of waste. So I'm originally born here in Hungary, and then we left when I was 4 years old, moved to Germany, then Holland, then ended up in Canada. And then I went to university in the United States, a school called Princeton, which is in New Jersey. And once we got into university, my friends and I in high school, we were very happy that we didn't have to worry about high school anymore. So the first thing we did is we bought some pot plants. You can see them right here. These are just the baby versions. And one of the challenges with growing pot is that the plants always start female, and then if you screw up, they turn male, and they're useless when they become male. So it's very important to focus on getting the perfect balance and to create female plants. Now, we couldn't do this. We were guys, we don't know anything about gardening, and we just wanted to party. We didn't really want to become experts at hydroponics. So I came down to the US, and then 6 months later, my friend Pete, who's the guy in this photo, calls me and he goes, "Tom, I figured it out. The plants are growing incredibly well." So I get in my car, I drive up to Montreal, very excited. In fact, I walked into a beautiful grow room. It was full to the top, really nice. We enjoyed that night, it was very inspiring. And then I asked him, how do you do this? What was your secret? And he said, well, I took organic waste, which is this, and fed it to worms. And the worms took it and pooed out worm poop. That's what they would probably do. And that worm poop was great fertilizer for the plants. That was the solution. Now, we didn't invent this. If you garden, you know that this is a great way to do fertilizer. Nothing we did that was special. But I really fell in love then. Yes?
How do you get the poop out of it?
You take the worm and you squeeze it like that. It's a good question. I'm going to show you right now. The way we did the poop was, so this idea of this machine came to me while I was sitting on a toilet. Because I was reflecting on what is the purpose of a toilet? Really think about it. A toilet is this beautiful ceramic seat. It's very nice. You know, if you sit on a toilet in Japan, it will blow air up your butt. It'll even wash your butt. It'll even say thank you when you get off. But why would you sit on a toilet is for only one reason, which is to get your body waste away from you as fast as possible. Because you press that magic button, and whatever's in the toilet is in another country within like 2 minutes, you know? That's the purpose. And it speaks to the idea that no animal likes to hang out in its own waste. Now, we're built for that. You know, if one eats its own waste, then that's very unhealthy. Our bodies are built not to be repelled. That's why shit smells like shit. You know, it doesn't smell like bubblegum and roses. It smells like something we want to be as far away from as possible. Now, in nature, that works because the output of a fox is the input not for a fox, but for some other animal. And the output for that animal is an input maybe for something very different. The challenge in the human system is all those 300 extra categories of waste we have no counterpart in nature to solve. There are no real bacteria that eat plastic. There's a few little experiments, but nothing substantial. And that's why we have to be able to solve it ourselves, even though it's not in our animalistic nature, if you will, to do that. So the way it all came together, after sort of having this epiphany on the toilet, was this is the machine, and the waste would go first into this drum and rotate. And it would naturally, through adding oxygen, heat the garbage to about 100 degrees Celsius, which is boiling point, within 20 hours because of the microorganism activity and the rotation and the air. It's how you make good compost. Rotate and lots of oxygen. Then it goes into this machine, which is really a worm toilet. So the theory of this machine is that the food goes in the middle, spreads out onto the conveyor belts, which are moving in an outward direction, so this way or that way, and 3 centimeters every hour. The reason it's 3 centimeters every hour is because that's the pace the worms are moving from their poop into the food. And it just, this can even be on, you just wouldn't notice it. And what falls off the end is just little pieces of worm poop, and the worms always stay in the middle. And it worked. 1,000 pounds of garbage or 500 kilos of garbage a day would go through, and premium worm poop would come out. Now, the problem, this was in 2003, I was about 21 at the time. And we wanted to, there was no other worm poop company out there. We thought we could be the kings of worm poop. And we said, let's go raise some money. We went out and no one would invest. They all said, why don't you start a .com? That's what young 20-something-year-old people should do. And I said, well, I want to do worm poop. Why don't give us some funding? And anyway, it's got no money. So we ended up raising capital by entering and winning business plan contests. These are very available all around the world for everybody, no matter where you live. And you can win $5, $10, $20,000 in prizes, even up to $1 million. So we ended up entering these contests, and we, at the beginning, didn't win, but then got good at it and learned how to present. And we won 7 of these in a row and raised about $100,000. We ended up spending it all on running the machine and building our science and so on. And we had a really interesting turning point happen right in April 2003, about 11 years ago, where we had run out of money. We had $500 left in the bank, and there was no investor wanted to invest still. And we entered a contest for $1 million of funding. To make a long story short, we won the money, but the venture capitalist who was giving us the money wanted us to stop focusing on the garbage thing and just make a good organic fertilizer, put it on the shelf, and simplify the business, which makes sense, and do it a little differently. But the reason we created TerraCycle was to look at how to look at garbage differently. It was not about being a fertilizer company. Fertilizer happened to be the first manifestation of doing that. So we turned the money down, which was a really interesting position because we felt very righteous but very poor all at the same time. And so we go back to our office and we all sat down and we said, what do? We can't even afford packaging to be able to bottle our worm poop, and we need to generate sales. It's the only way we're going to get money. So we thought, well, wait a minute. If we make a product in garbage, could we package a product in garbage? So what happened is my friends and I had this sort of idea. We took plastic bags and we went around to all the recycling containers in the Princeton area and took out all the soda bottles from everyone's recycling container. Now, it turns out it's not legal to go through people's garbage, and I had a chance to reflect on this while spending a night in jail that night. But the next morning when I got out, I went back to the office and my friends had all the bottles they had collected laid out. And I realized one of the first interesting realization about garbage, which is that it's exceptionally standardized. It's the same everywhere. The same company that makes toothbrushes here in Hungary is the same one that makes them for most of the world, and they're exactly the same everywhere you go, except maybe the language is different, that's about it. But garbage is very standardized. And in the world of bottles, in plastic bottles, there's only 4 types of bottles. If you look at 99.9% of every bottle that exists, there are only 4 types. There's the half liter, 591 milliliter, 1 liter, and 2 liter. And then within any one of those categories, the height is the same of every bottle. The cap tread, what you turn the cap on, is the same. The bottom is the same. The only difference between a Coke, a Pepsi, and some other brand bottle is the shape of the bottle, or the color of the plastic. It's very standardized. So we created, through that realization, our first product ever. This is liquid worm poop in a used soda bottle. Basically, we take the bottle, we cut off the label, fill it up with worm poop, put a leftover trigger head. So these are trigger heads companies throw out because they change their designs. And the only part of the label, of the package or the product that is not garbage is the label, because one looks like a Coke bottle, one looks like a Pepsi bottle, and we had to have a label that could fit any type of shape. Because if it was a paper label, you can imagine it would always go on the wrong part of the bottle. There we had it. First product, more or less made and packaged entirely out of garbage. And we thought, always we want to go big as possible. I've always had this sort of energy inside me that we should always start at the very top and work our way down. So we decided, why don't we try to get this sold at the biggest retailer in the world, which is Walmart. Now, we somehow got the name of the guy who buys fertilizer, but they wouldn't take our call. So we ended up doing this trick where we got about 5 to 10 phones together, friends' cell phones, pay phones, and we would call from a different phone number every hour, just so it's not the same number that kept popping up on the guy's phone. And did that for about 23 days, literally. It must have been like 2,000 phone calls or something. And at the end, and this is one of the tricks I think to any entrepreneurial experience, is passionate persistence. You have to care about what you do. It's really important, or you will never transfer that caring to anybody else. But then be persistent and work hard. It's never going to just come to you. And they finally gave us the meeting. My friend and I went down to Arkansas, where Walmart is headquartered, and we showed them the product, and they bought the product. They bought 100,000 bottles, in fact. But we had no factory. It was my friend and I, as college students, pretending we had a factory, and that we were like a big organization. But it was 2 kids in a dormitory room with this worm poop machine. And so we get back with this big purchase order, $250,000 of worm poop in a soda bottle. And we got all our friends together, and we just made it in time. We had a lot of friends working with recycling centers getting the bottles. Then 5 of my friends cutting off the labels with razor blades. Then a friend literally pouring in the juice by a funnel. And my favorite was how we put on the label, which is we took 4 hair dryers in a cone and dipped the bottle into the cone, and as long as you did it just right, you wouldn't burn your fingers and you would shrink it on beautifully. Once we sold it, though, everything took off. And that's one of the things I've seen is once one big company embraces what you do, they all do. Very quickly, Home Depot, Target, all the other major retailers embraced it, and through that funding, we went 10 minutes south to an inner city in New Jersey, 10 minutes south of Princeton, in a town called Trenton, and bought this building. It's about let's see, in square meters, maybe 5,000 square meter building, and it looked like what you see in the photos. Within a year, it looked like this. Solar panels on the roof, and we made it into a complete green building. I'll show you some more pictures as we go. We also found another metaphor of waste. If you agree that waste is something you are willing to pay to get rid of, graffiti is a form of garbage. If I took a spray paint can and spray painted what I perceive to be beautiful art here, 2 things would probably happen. One is I'd probably never be invited back again, and or maybe it would be even worse, who knows. And on top of that, the office would probably spend money painting the wall back to this nice white color. You would pay to get rid of it. So what we did is in all of our offices now in 26 countries around the world, we have a rule where anyone can come paint anything they want, anytime they want. And it's gotten so big, first the art is nice because they're not being chased by the police, and the second is that our building, 5,000 square meters, every Monday is brand new. We come in, every Monday, everything is gone, completely repainted. It's a little faster in the summer when it's warmer, but still, and they thank me. I don't even contribute at all except give them the space. Now one of the neat things, as you grow a business, is what happens from a competitive point of view. In the first year of our business, we did $500,000, then $1.5 million, then $3.5 million in sales. We were becoming a bigger and bigger worm poop company. But every time we got our product on the shelf, somebody was taken off the shelf. In our case, it was Miracle-Gro. Now, if you can't tell these two products apart, let me just point them out. This is TerraCycle here. That's worm poop in a soda bottle. That's Miracle-Gro there. Just in case for this side of the audience. This is Miracle-Gro right here. And that's TerraCycle right there. The reason I say this is because Miracle-Gro, $3 billion fertilizer company against a $3 million fertilizer company at the time, sued us. They sued us because they said you cannot tell them apart. And again, just in case you're confused. He's offended. This is Miracle-Gro, and that is TerraCycle. Now the challenge in the American legal system, if you ever do business in America, is the legal system has a big problem now, which is that if I sue you for anything, and let's say you win, I still have to pay my legal bill, you pay your legal bill. When in most countries, whoever wins doesn't pay anything. And the loser pays all the costs, the settlement cost and the cost of legal bills. This was costing us $250,000 a month. That's a lot of money when your revenue is only $3 million a year. And our lawyer said it would have taken $3 million of legal expenses, which is about 1 year of time, to be able to prove that we were right. Because I don't think you can, they look pretty different. Again, just in case, right? Miracle-Gro, TerraCycle. So one of the things we learned in this process is one way to fight, especially if you're a social business, but any small business, is you don't have to fight on the type of battlefield that the people put in front of you. We decided that instead of fighting this in court, which we had to do, we had to go through all the court process, but we decided to take it to the media instead. We just emailed the lawsuit to all the big newspapers in the world, and within 60 days, 100 articles were written around the world saying, why the hell is this big chemical conglomerate trying to sue the most environmentally friendly thing that ever happened in the industry? And it was so successful that within 60 days, the lawsuit went away. And one of the key lessons here is that you don't have to fight the battle on the field that is put in front of you. Because many times, that field has been put in front of you by whoever's fighting you because they know you're not going to win on that field. So change the field. Now, we had this moment occur again. We said, we've now more or less beaten this big company in a lawsuit. We have now become a $3.5 million fertilizer company. Why do we exist? What's our purpose? And we reflected and we said the purpose, of course, is solving waste. It's not fertilizer. So we asked the question, can we broaden this idea? Can we take this innovation of making a product out of garbage and apply it to any product in the world? And so we started going back to the theory of garbage. I'm going to go back a little bit into the theory. One of the things we realized is every type of object one day becomes waste. With no exception, everything one day breaks. The only difference between this cup, which will be garbage in, I don't know, 10 minutes, or this microphone, which will be garbage maybe in 2-3 years when it breaks, is time. That is the only difference. If you don't look at time, everything becomes waste instantly. Now, some things that become waste can be recycled, and some things cannot. There's these two systems in every country in the world. But what's fascinating is if you look at the recycling system, and I've had a chance to visit 60 countries and see the recycling infrastructure, we work in 26 of them, it's always the same 5 things that are possible to be in a national recycling system. It's paper, aluminum, glass, rigid PET, and rigid HDPE, number 1 and number 2 plastic. The question to me was, why are those things always recyclable and everything else not? Is it that technically those can be recycled, but a toothbrush, a pen, a cigarette cannot? And it turned out it had nothing to do with the technical capacity. It had everything to do with economics. And we found that this is the magical equation that renders something recyclable or not recyclable. If you take an aluminum can, like a can of Coca-Cola, the reason companies all around the world want to collect it is because the cost of collection, logistics, plus the cost of processing is less than the value of the aluminum, and so you can make money. And that's why those 5 things are collected in many countries around the world. Everything else, the cost of collecting cigarettes here in Hungary, plus the cost of processing cigarettes here in Hungary, is much more than what we are able to sell cigarette plastic for. And that's the only reason things become not recyclable. I get invited a lot to companies like Procter & Gamble and Kraft and others to give innovation talks and teach their product designers how to design away from the concept of garbage. And I always open my talk with a joke, which is I say, Gillette, if you want to make your razor blade never end up in the garbage, simple answer, make it out of solid gold. Because if you made it out of solid gold, nobody would throw it out. And if they did, someone really quickly will take it and realize that there's a lot of value there. Now, of course, that's an extreme example, but that's the answer. The reason we have so much garbage is because our things are made from low-quality materials that don't have high value when you collect them. That's the only reason something is or is not recyclable. So how do you look at circular solutions? What we came up with is we have to come up with a theory of garbage, and we came up with this theory where if you take this cup, I would argue, is made from three things. One, it's made from plastic. But it doesn't just look like a bunch of plastic pellets in my hand, it looks like a cup. So it's another thing, it's a form. It's the shape of a cup. But it's a third thing too. The reason this cup exists is an idea. The idea is, how do I consume a cold beverage? This cup wasn't made to hold hot coffee because it doesn't have a handle and it would be very hot, it even maybe melts. It wasn't made to grow a plant, which it probably could. It wasn't made to put pencils in. It could probably be a fine pencil holder. It was made to put a cold beverage into. If you look at waste in those three ways, composition, features, and intention, then you unlock the magic of circular solutions. So here's the 5 possible solutions to waste. The bottom 2 are the worst. Landfill, which is bury it, or incinerate it, which is burn it, and those can only happen once. The real question is circular solutions. So this is how it works for us. We have a team of designers and a team of scientists. The designers look at reuse first, and then upcycling, and then the scientists look at recycling. Reuse is where you value all 3 aspects of the waste: the material, the features, and the intention. Where this is big is, for example, electronics, cell phones, laptops, digital cameras. We refurbish tens of millions of these devices every year and just sell them again as a phone or a laptop or whatever. Just take the data off, new battery, and out it goes. The same with shoes or clothing. That happens quite a bit. Here's some atypical examples of reuse. Of course, the worm poop in a soda bottle is one. But here is how that line expanded. And if you look in the middle, that bird feeder is just an upside-down 2-liter soda bottle. And it was also the best-selling bird feeder in America for 2 years. Here's an example we did with Unilever last year, where we found that the plants that you buy from a nursery come in those black, pots, and you throw them out, you can't recycle them. But a butter package is the exact same specification as a planting pot. So we took 35 million used butter packages that we collected, 35 million, put a hole in the bottom, and that is how all the plants at every Walmart in California were packaged last summer. So that's an example of reuse. But reuse is limited to electronics, high-end electronics, clothing, and simple shaped, rigid packaging like this. So the next layer then is upcycling. Upcycling is where you value the material that a waste stream is made from and its features, but you purposefully do not value what its intention was. Juice pouches, like in the backpack example, were never intended to be to be backpacks, but they make very good backpacks. Now everything I'm going to show you is done in very big scale. Each of these products are tens of thousands have been made. Pet products like pet beds, dog beds made out of PET packaging, wine corks into cork boards, circuit boards into frames and clocks, vinyl records. Some of you may remember these. They melt very well into bowls and other clocks. This is post office bags. This is kites and lunch kits from chocolate packaging. Here is a shower curtain made from granola packaging. I actually really like this one because it even says bare naked and there's little holes, which is very appropriate for when someone's taking a shower. Here's speakers. Here is stationery products. Here's pens made from toothbrushes. And remember, a toothbrush was designed to be ergonomic in the hand. We just did 2 million of these last year. Or movie film. Movie film gets thrown out as soon as the movie leaves the cinema. Or even soccer balls, we're in Europe, so footballs. Or here's an example of a shoe. Now, the way we do this, because we learned a big challenge, is you can't do it all yourself. One of the important things in business is to focus on what you are very good at, and then work with other partners on everything else. So we're not an expert at shoes or shower curtains, so here we work with Timberland. Timberland's a good shoe company. We create a material where we squeeze 3-4 layers of coffee packaging together so it can hold a stitch. And 30% of the leather has been removed and substituted for coffee packaging waste. And then the bottom of the shoe, you can't see it here because of the white plastic, is actually wine corks that are just shredded, mashed together, and it creates the bottom of the shoe. So here, 40% of the shoe has been removed and has been replaced with garbage. And we found that upcycling can go in many, many different places. Here, for example, are 2 dresses that we made that are both in museums. This is in the Museum of Modern Art in New York. It's made from 6,000 used chocolate packages. And let's just say there's a lot of hard and exciting work to get the material together for that dress. If anyone didn't get it, I'll let you have a moment. Even our offices all around the world, we have a design rule where they're made always entirely from garbage, and actually turns out to be cheaper than any other way to build an office. This is our office in the United States. Every detail is garbage. Here's the office in Mainz, but it actually just moved to Berlin for Germany, or Toronto, Canada, or Brazil, Sao Paulo, London. You can see every detail from. I lost the. Do we have another microphone?
Yeah, there's another mic downstairs.
Here.
Yeah.
How do I?
Open the garbage.
I know, right? It just became garbage. How do anyone know how to turn it on?
Yeah, in the bottom. Hold it for 2 seconds.
Oh, the red button?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah? Okay, cool. See? Something just became garbage as we were talking. I was giving that 2 years and it already just finished. So we found that it can go a long way, but the problem with upcycling is not everyone wants to have a Chio bag or a Starbucks shoe. Many people don't want to be walking around with all these logos. So upcycling only accounts for 4% of the waste that we collect. So where does the rest go is what we would call recycling, where you take the material of the waste stream and focus only on the material, not the intention of the garbage and not the features of the material. So this toy may be something that is very familiar. This is Mr. Potato Head made by Hasbro, but he's a very special version. This one is made entirely from used potato chip bags, nothing else. Or, we found that anything, whether it's cigarettes, whether it's chewing gum, whether it's diapers, even used tampons can be recycled as long as you can deconstruct it into its raw material. So here's an example of something that people said was never possible, to recycle aluminumized waste, like a toothpaste tube or a juice pouch that has high degrees of aluminum inside. And here it is, recycled juice pouches. You can even see a little piece of aluminum in the example. Now we work with a lot of big companies, and I'll explain how that works in a moment, but one of the things we really try to do with our big company partners is how do we get them to take the garbage back into their own system? And that typically begins with promotional products, because one of the challenges when you work with big organizations is that they're big and there's lots of bureaucracy. So as we move through these organizations, we try to make it very easy for them to create action. So the reason that usually promotional products are the first ones that companies work with us on is because you don't have to ask operations for their point of view. So here's the different examples of, and these are just categories, there's hundreds of examples where people make premiums or bags for celebrities made out of this material, or even large implementation. Here's the playground. We built 10 of these last year. This one is built entirely from used flip-flops. The only additive was the color to get to that blue iconic color. Now, what really gets us excited is how we then later integrate into the operational question and get companies to take the garbage directly back into their system. For example, right here, this pen is the world's first pen made from used pens. Next year, you'll see the world's first oral care product, a toothbrush made from used toothbrushes. You'll see the first cosmetic product in the world made from used cosmetic packaging, the first razor blade in the world made from used razor blades, all with the biggest brands in those categories, whether it's P&G or L'Oreal or Colgate. Here's another, this just happened a month ago, just to show you how advanced it can be. We built 5 Frito-Lay trucks. Now, we're not the truck company. We worked with the truck company called Spartan Motors, and every plastic piece of the truck was replaced with used chip bags, except for thermodynamic components in the engine, because we just didn't have enough science time to solve for the tiny little thermodynamic pieces. But other than that, everything, even the black here, is chip bags. The side, we accentuated it so you can see it's even more obviously chip bags. But if you can make a truck from chip bags, you can do anything from the waste. Hopefully what I showed you is anything can be processed. The key, though, to be able to solve any type of waste isn't the solution. That is important, but there's one step that is more important. How do you collect the waste separately? How do you actually get the waste in a way that you can do this process, because it's so complicated, so mixed together? Now what happened, this is one of the neat things I find in business, especially in the world of TerraCycle, is we started, after 4 years in, we were worm-proof, we had the lawsuit, we decided to expand like crazy and make many different products from garbage. And we made them all ourselves. We had 300 workers in a factory making bags, making fertilizer, making all these things. And we went from 3.5 million in sales to 7 million in sales, so we doubled again, which was nice. but we lost $5 million that year because we couldn't be experts at making everything ourselves. So we learned that lesson and we shut down our factory. We have no factory workers anymore. And instead we work everything through partners who are experts in those categories. And then our sales doubled again, from 7 to 14 million, yet the next year we became profitable. And one of the things that you realize is sometimes when you invent one process for one thing, it could very easily translate to another. In the worm poop, we had to get in soda bottles that were not crushed. And the challenge in that is that when you take soda bottles to a recycling center, big trucks drive over them and they crush them into pieces that you can't then aesthetically refill. So we created a program called the Brigade. Here's how it works. People would go to TerraCycle.com, sign up to collect soda bottles, take a cardboard box, fill it up with bottles, download a shipping label from our website, send it to our warehouse in the country, and then we would donate at 2 cents for every piece of package they collected to any school or charity of their choice. And it worked really well. And that's how we got the soda bottles in. Then what was interesting is once we expanded to all these other categories of waste, we realized that we need to collect other types of waste. But we also realized that the real question wasn't about making the product the hero. Like, how do we make a bird feeder and then what garbage can we make it from? Or how do we make a bag and what garbage can we make it from? We said, we're doing everything backward. We're trying to make a product and then we're just trying to get the best garbage for it. Instead, we should think about what type of garbage is a problem and then what can we make it into? So we adapted this model and started selling this model to major consumer product companies. It actually became the backbone of our business. And today, 60 million people, even 120,000 people here, use this program to collect waste. Here's what it looks like. Today, 75% of all schools in North America, 20% of all schools in Latin America, I don't know what percent in Europe, but a relatively big percent run this program. It doesn't have to be just schools, it can be offices and everywhere else. Here's kids collecting chip bags. And then what happens is really amazing. Without us asking them, they start developing these things by hundreds of thousands of them. You know, these big sort of, large, fancy recycling containers. Then teachers go completely crazy, dress like garbage. Even here in Hungary, there's some crazy teachers who dress up in garbage and teach their students about garbage through this platform. Now the question is, this may sound like a very sort of hippie, granola project, and will people actually collect? This is the data from an average program. We run about 200 of these programs around the world now, and this shows how many cosmetic packages came in every month since we started collecting cosmetic waste in the US with L'Oreal. Within 33 months, we had 3.5 million people collecting 250,000 pieces of cosmetic waste every month, and it just keeps growing and growing. The question, though, is this good data? I mean, it looks very fancy in the chart, but is it bad? So what we do is we compare against the recycling rates in the world. The UK image is how fast the very concept of recycling grew in the UK. It went from 6% in 1996 to 23% in 2009. And that growth is the same growth that all of our programs around the world see. They grow at the very rate of recycling. And what happened is companies now can use this program, and this is just maybe half of the companies that we work with, it's all the large consumer product companies, to make their objects nationally recyclable, because now anyone in that country can collect that waste, and they're the ones who come in and fund the entire platform. Now, what's also nice about working with companies like these, and it may not seem intuitive from a social business perspective, why work with these big companies, even why work with tobacco, which is a very nasty company. I mean, the product is proven to create health risks. The reason that's really interesting is because they have big availability to make things very large, and it's also easy to replicate around the world pretty quickly. I mean, last year we did $20 million of business, but we operate in 26 countries. And we're sort of like a micro multinational. What's interesting is every month we have a call with our partners and we ask them, what other countries do you want us to bring our service to? And that's how we ended up opening in Hungary, how we ended up opening in Japan, Australia, and so on. Because for Colgate, for example, toothbrushes are not just a problem in the United States, but it's a global problem because nowhere in the world are toothbrushes recyclable. Now, what we find always in our business is we try to tell our team that we never have the answer. We may have a good idea today of what to do, but we never have the fundamental answer. And that keeps us highly innovative because we never assume we know what we're doing. The way we do, where we focus most of that effort is creating many different ways of collecting waste. So I showed you one, the brigade model. Here's another one now that's in 70,000 retailers around the world, where retailers get these collection boxes. There's many different versions. They put them in the store, fill it up with garbage, and then send it in. Oops. Here's examples with Nespresso or even in factories. Well, here's another model that was really interesting. We just started deploying this 2 months ago in British Columbia, which is in Canada. People now, the way this all came about is we sold 20% of our Canadian business for a few $1 million to the biggest waste management company in Canada called Progressive Waste. And this enabled us to create this new platform, which we hope to bring around the world if it's successful. People in Canada, British Columbia, now get a catalog where they can buy various garbage bags. They're called zero waste bags. There's 50 different types of bags for each different type of waste. One is for human parts, like hair and nails and things like that. Another one is for hygiene products, like diapers and feminine hygiene products. Another one is for flexible food packaging, and there's 50 bags. Some are free, because companies are willing to fund them, and some of them cost money to the consumer. But what happens is the idea of waste in the community completely changes. Today, in Vancouver, here are the three types of where your 3 types of garbage go. You have organics, which is composted. You have recyclables, which is recycled. But then 70% of the garbage still goes to the landfill. So now what happens is people buy these bags. They put them into the recycling container. So you have all these different bags of sorted garbage. It's already sorted in the recycling container. Our garbage company partner picks them up, takes it to the municipal recycling facility, but they take out all the bags. So we have sorted garbage. Those bags then come to us and we open them up, we separate them, and everything can be recycled. This becomes the first time in modern history that any home can choose to have 100% of its garbage recycled. And one of the reasons we did this partnership with this garbage company, and we've done this also in Germany and Brazil, is that now they're rolling this out into their entire infrastructure. All across Canada, this program will be available in about a year, where anyone, anywhere in the country will be able to get a zero waste bag or multiple, put it in their recycling bin, and have everything recycled. I want to leave you just with one other last idea, which I think applies to anything, whether it's a social business like TerraCycle or any business whatsoever, is how do you deal with marketing? Because one of the challenges when you're a young company, no matter how large, is that marketing is very expensive. And what makes a good marketing person is typically, in a typical approach, is that you get you make really good creative content, a really good commercial, you try to make it as cheap as possible and really interesting, and then you buy television time or media time as cheaply as you can. And that's the recipe for a good advertising person, but that costs money. What TerraCycle has done is our marketing department is actually a profit center. In other words, we have negative cost marketing. And the thesis of negative cost marketing, the way you do it, is why pay to be the advertising when you can get paid to be the content? If you look at the media environment today around the world, what's happening? There are more and more need to put out content. There are blogs now for all these newspapers. They have to be updated every day. There's way more outlets. There's conferences. There's way more TV stations. There's so much need for content, yet there's fewer and fewer dollars in the media environment. You hear all the time about newspapers having less staff, but they have to put out more content. I'll give you an example of this. When I was getting interviewed by the New York Times 10 years ago, a day or two after the interview, I'd always get called by a fact checker who would check, are these facts accurate? That hasn't happened in 5 years. They don't have fact checkers anymore. That's why the news has gotten significantly less credible. But you can use this for your own point of view. Instead of focusing on paying to become advertising, if you can be good content, you can actually get paid in the process. How does this work? For us, we found that it's a hierarchy of media strategies. The first one is publicity. One of the things we do is we find that this type of program creates very positive publicity for our brand partners, companies like here Chio or others in Hungary. And then we ask them to fund us so that we can generate publicity. And we do generate huge amounts of publicity, hundreds of articles per brand, per country, per year. They all mention TerraCycle, so they promote us as well, but it's funded by our partners. This average is now 18.2 articles a day. Now when you start getting written about a lot, that's when really the magic of negative cost marketing begins. And by the way, here's what happens. If you are able to have something unique and generate lots of press, you can own the Google terms. So if you today go to Google and type in something as simple as chip bag recycling, not only is the first link the TerraCycle program, but 99% of the links Google has archived is the TerraCycle program. Google cigarette recycling, it's only invented less than 2 years ago. 85% of every link Google has, and of course the #1 link is that program. So you can dominate, not just be the search engine optimization, but dominate the entire concept of a search term. Now, once you start getting publicity, it goes to the first true level of negative cost marketing, which is start blogging. So what we have the style of doing is every time we get written about in a newspaper or a magazine, often we call that newspaper or magazine and say, can we write for you? Here in Hungary, I think I write for HVG, which I think is a big media outlet here. But we do that in 35 other major places. So the New York Times, now we write for them, and they pay us to put our propaganda in their paper. It's very nice. You don't have to call a journalist, beg them to write a story. You just put anything you want out over and over. Now, if you can do a lot of blogging, that leads you to the next step, which is you might as well write books. We have 2 books that are written. This blue one's going to come out in Hungary in 6 months. And they pay you to create awareness about your system. And now we do 1 book every year. Our media department has to go get book deals, because it's another way to generate revenue and create a lot of content. And of course, books get you more interviews. Everything becomes a big, huge, self-fulfilling cycle. Then if you do this, it's very easy to get sponsorships. We've done lots of commercials where Apple, Gap, come in, we say we use their product, they put out TV commercials. We even get very good at winning awards. This is maybe 10% of the awards we win. We win an award now every 10 days on average. And there's actually a joke around the office because no one wants to go accept these awards anymore because you have to sit in this dinner, listen to stupid speeches, and then pick up some piece of wood. But the way to get awards is a simple formula. You have to apply. That's it. Just get good at applying. People usually don't ever apply, and it gets you tons of credibility and even more self-generated publicity. Then there's one step after that, which is then why not even have your own TV show? We filmed season 1 of our TV show was called Garbage Moguls, and it follows every episode as we solve a type of garbage. It was bought by the Ozone Network here. In Hungarian it's called Szemétdomcsászárok, and it's on the Ozone Network. I don't know if anyone's seen it or not, but it airs here in Hungary as well. It actually airs in 22 countries. So this is negative cost marketing. The network, National Geographic Channel, pays us $10,000, $20,000 an episode. The episode is a big commercial about TerraCycle, and it then airs everywhere around the world. And it's actually funny, because on the Ozone Network, they don't do the undertext, they do the dubbing. So it's weird to see myself speaking Hungarian and someone else's voice. But they're much better than I am. We're now filming the 2nd season of our TV show, which also will be airing out here in Hungary in 2015, I think also on the Ozone Network. And now I want to share with you a clip of these shows, and then we'll get into the real learning of negative cost marketing. But I want to show you the 2 first before I give you the explanation. So, this one, what I'm going to show you first is season 1. This is in English, not in Hungarian, but this is what airs out here in Hungary as well. And let's see if we can, I'll show you 2 episodes. Episode 1 is, episode 2 is upcycling, and episode 3 is recycling. There is no such thing as garbage, really. It's just that it's missing collection and solution. Pedigree has challenges to create an entire line of pet products made from dog food bags. So what we have constructed here is it's a dog food bag connecting a car. 3, 2, 1. Oh, no, the knots are holding. That's the point of today. It's really experiment with this. Why don't we start with the jackets? These bags are holding nicely. So this is a fantastic looking collar. And then the leash connects to this, right?
Oh boy, he's looking.
So far, so good. We have our samples, we have everything. So it's at this point, you just have to sell the program. It's all on me now. Why don't you just bring out products and try to feedback on them. So the first toy. This can easily, it's you can outrip it apart.
Yeah.
I just had the meeting with the Pedigree Nutro folks over at Mars. They absolutely, hands down, fell in love with the products. We now have a solution to the hundreds of millions of pet food bags that are in landfill. So that was upcycling. This next episode is recycling. So this is all the chip bags, right?
We're going to make pallets out of it.
We're going to make some pellets. This is filtering all the chips and all the crap out, right? So this is it. So how do you feel about it? It looks pretty good.
We took post
post-consumer wrappers without cleaning them and sent them through a machine, mixed, and they came out beautiful. When I look at this, all I see is like potato chip bags. It says here, so this is the inside, right, of the trash can?
Correct.
First chip bag trash can ever.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
Congrats. We figured it out. It's 500 chip bags going to one of these.
These are great, Tom. Very durable.
Wow. I think we've just solved like the biggest problem we ever had.
I know.
We have an opportunity to figure out if we can make a retail store work. This is the first time TerraCycle has ever tried retail. If the investors
so that was season 1. What I want to show you now is, this is the first episode of the new season. We're actually in the middle of filming it still. But I want to show you the difference between these two shows. And this one, like I said, will come here in 2015. This is episode 1, season 2.
Is this on? What's this red light mean? Is that...
I think
Wait,
yeah.
no, that's me. We're in. Okay.
All right. So if you're watching this, you're one of our international team members, and we're excited to host you next week for TerraCycle's International Week here in Trenton, New Jersey. But we wanted to make you this film to introduce you to the people who make up TerraCycle US, so come along.
Crush it.
That's what I do. What TerraCycle does is we make things that are non-recyclable, nationally recyclable. Every single challenge that comes to TerraCycle is one that no one in the world has ever solved before. Our major global solution for garbage, put it in a pile. How can we change the garbage to make it into something new? We today collect millions of cell phones, ink cartridges, all the way to clothing like shoes, that can all be easily reused. And you've got transformed trash. For 10 years in a row, we have only grown. We operate in 23 countries. Everything we did, we invented. How do we eliminate the concept of waste?
I don't want you to take it the wrong way because you're really good at it. But do you ever not talk in sound bites?
And let me just do some quick introductions to everyone. This is our account management team.
International Week is a thing that TerraCycle has done now for 3 or 4 years in a row. It's an opportunity for us to bring all of our offices from all around the world here for a week of team building and getting to know each other.
So the first person I want to introduce you to is Stefan.
My name is Steven Katz. I work in the material sales department at TerraCycle.
He just recently joined the science department. Is there anything that you want to share with the people from International Week?
Only that I've been here for a year and a half.
This company is an ultra-modern company that exists. There's yoga every other day. They can just work out, enjoy, let out a little steam. Just this morning I had a Nerf gun fight with an intern just because I didn't like the way he was working.
Now, we're going to go over here.
Tom has a very broad vision. Because he's so smart and because he's a genius, he has trouble relating with us normal people.
I believe Tom is probably the youngest boss I've ever worked for. It's like working for my kid.
Now we go to the cage. Notice that it's actually a fully operational cage where we can lock people, partly because of who's inside. Finance department, this is Donna.
I think if everybody cut out the stupid yoga and bringing their dogs to work, it would probably make a lot more money.
Hi, International Week team.
Are you
Having a scotch.
So my dad's Al. He's the general counsel here.
It's 6 o'clock Friday night. I feel like I'm entitled.
Al is like a bulldog.
bloated, self-righteous asshole?
I mean, the guy's got a baseball bat in his office. We have Andrew, who just lost his goatee. Yeah, you got like a whole baby thing going on now.
I don't care about the environment so much. They're always talking about the environment. They're always talking about Barack Obama.
Now we're going to head over to our friend.
I wanted to show you guys
Dean's our
one
little
scene here. So that's the introduction. My
hip-hop.
favorite scene in this particular... So the favorite scene in this particular episode is actually with Steve, which you're going to see here. Steve is one of our scientists, and he has a romance with one of our employees in Mexico. You can see how it plays out.
Hey Alan, Richard, thanks for the guys for the meeting. I just want to make sure all my bases are covered, both legal and HR-wise, to make sure there's no ramifications that can come up.
Steve apparently has a crush on Diana Roscoe from our Mexico office, and I guess he went and talked to my dad about it. I'm not really sure why. I mean, the guy that usually gets the girl goes out and takes what he wants. And that's not the guy who checks with HR to make sure that it's okay.
Right now,
You haven't really spoken to her about this yet.
none whatsoever.
But you've talked to her? I mean, how do you know her?
Just through mouth of word.
Word. We had some concerns when there's romance in an office generally. In this case, I'm really concerned about a perceived hegemony.
Not at all. I do not know what the word hegemony means.
Word for this.
subsidiary to the American parent company may be perceived as, the gringo from El Norte.
Mexican law is much more strict about these sorts of things even than U.S. law. I've even heard that there can be criminal charges brought.
And if she does, then the company could be subject to some kind of suit for I don't know, discrimination.
Be more likely to be retaliation. I mean, we don't necessarily want her to sign a release.
But would Mexican law or U.S. law apply?
It would depend.
I'd be stuck in a Mexican jail.
Who asked that question? Oh, come on, TV is so real, don't you think? No. So first, I'll answer your question in a minute, but this was the difference, and this is the fundamental learning we had about negative cost marketing. You remember the first show I showed you? No one laughed. No laughing whatsoever. The second one, you guys were having a much better time with it. The lesson there is if you want to truly do fantastic negative cost marketing, you have to first serve the content, and then serve yourself. Both TV shows will promote TerraCycle. But when you do it in a way that makes good television, there's much higher chances of more TV show episodes, more seasons being reordered, and so on. And if you only serve yourself, then you're not going to get a lot more of that content, because people don't just want to place commercials all the time. They want you to pay for those. So to answer your question, by the way, no, it's not real. It's what we call semi-scripted reality. What that means is that I'm a producer, we have our chief marketing officer is a producer, and then we have the TV network and then the TV show production people. We all get together and we look at what TerraCycle already does, and each episode has two pieces. One is a TerraCycle story where we take something we do and maybe we reenact some of it, maybe some of it is invented on the show, but usually it's a little bit of a reenactment, if you will. And then on the other side, which is the human side of the story, we take people and we make them more about who they are. We take the weird things about people and we accentuate them. So Steve, he's an awkward, nerdy guy. So we really play into that. We make him super awkward in the show, and not everyone likes it. Many people don't want to be in the show, but the ones who do play into their personalities because that's what makes good television. If you just walked into our company with TV cameras, it would be boring. So you have to construct, these situations. And it takes a little bit of time. There's definitely investment in it, but it's a massive opportunity to be able to spread the message all over the world. I want to leave with one last point and then end, which is one of the things I really love about social business is its power. And I think many times people view social business as, oh, you're going to have a little, organic soap company, and then you'll sell your little organic soap in a little farmer's market, and you'll sell it just to people locally, and it's basically hippies selling to hippies, and very little chance of true scale. One of the things that's important as you look at social business, and any business, but especially social business, is to look at how to partner with the biggest scale. For TerraCycle, one of the most interesting partnerships that we had to think about was our partnership with the big tobacco companies around the world. We were debating, cigarette butts are the #1 most littered item in the planet. 4.5 trillion cigarettes end up on the street every year. And a cigarette is so toxic that if you put it into a tank of water, 1 liter of water with fish inside, all the fish would be dead within 24 hours. But 37% of our cigarettes end up on the street. Just outside there, sure you can find hundreds of cigarettes as you walk out the door. But should a company like TerraCycle, that's 40 million children use our program, we're in schools, we're given lots of awards for being green, should we partner with the world's biggest tobacco companies, the most difficult type of industry to work with? And what we realized as we reflected on this question was that every industry has negatives. The cosmetic industry has animal testing and the fact that many cosmetics lead to cancer because they're on your skin and they leach in. The women should be really cautious about this, by the way. The food industry, there's all the issues of obesity now, where the food is so refined with so much corn and sugar and other things that leads to obesity issues all over the world. Mexico actually just became the fattest country in the world, just past the U.S. And it didn't mean that the U.S. got thinner. Just Mexico got faster than the Americans got fatter. And even cigarettes have a major negative effect. They give people lung cancer and other forms of cancer. So what we agreed on internally was to say, look, we need to be focused on solving garbage. So instead of focusing on trying to fight every battle, which means we'll never have a partner, let's focus on fighting the garbage battle and let the other battles be fought by other organizations. So we ended up partnering with the tobacco industry literally 20 months ago. We launched the first program in Canada to nationally collect used cigarettes. It became so successful that within a year and a half, it just expanded all over the world. We today run this in 9 countries, including here in Hungary. You can now recycle cigarettes. We've already recycled 250,000 Hungarian cigarettes. Around the world, we get in now 1 million cigarettes every week. And that number goes up by 30% every single month. Here it is in the streets of Madrid. Now you can recycle cigarettes. Here it is in Hungary. It says rajtad múlik, which means it depends on use that cigarettes can be recycled. These are stations you will see at almost every Hungarian music festival, last year and probably this year as well. Or here it is on the streets of Paris, saying that you can now recycle your cigarettes. It's at an office building in La Défense. But what is my favorite thing about social business and entrepreneurship in general is that business can change the world very, very fast. And that's what I love the most. It's not the money, it's not the fame. What is really the most exciting to me is the ability to create change. Here's an example where we invented this idea. It's very simple. It's just an aluminum pouch called the butt sack, and you put your cigarette butts into it, and it has a shipping label printed on it, like a Magyar Posta shipping label. This is in Canada, and you put it in the mail when you're done. So the mail becomes your garbage can. That gets sent to us, we recycle it, it's nice and easy. We've done millions of these, but here's what I mean by creating change. Once we saw that the cigarette companies like this, we came up with an idea. We said, why don't you reinvent your package? Why don't you integrate the butt sack into your package? So you take the cigarette pack, you put it upside down, there's a hole in it, you put your cigarette in there, it goes into an internal aluminumized sack, and then when you're done, you take, let's try it with the laser here, you take the label where the dying person is, and you flip it upside down, you seal it so that this is sealed, and then here is a shipping label. And you put it in the mail, and the mail becomes your garbage. What's exciting, I can't tell you the brand because it's going to breach confidentiality, but in 2015, 1 billion packages per year will look like this around the world. 1 billion. And that, to me, is the real excitement and power of social business. So I want to leave you with one last video. We did our first deployment with a city 3 months ago, where we went into Vancouver and we deployed what you're about to see. And this is hopefully, too, soon going to come to Hungary. We're actually talking to a few Hungarian cities right now to see if we can bring this idea here.
Vancouver is hoping to become the cleanest city in the world by 2020. Just yesterday, they moved a step closer, becoming the first North American municipality to launch a recycling program for cigarette butts.
3.5 trillion cigarette butts are littered, totaling almost 1.69 billion pounds of cigarette waste.
Vancouver streets and sidewalks are treated like ashtrays.
Now, a company has chosen Vancouver for the world's first cigarette butt recycling program.
TerraCycle, a global recycling company, is installing 110 recycling receptacles with stickers that say, recycle your butt.
Today we're announcing the launch of the Cigarette Waste Brigade, a new recycling program, first of its kind in the world.
Enter the butt bin.
The idea is that smokers would drop their cigarette butt into the butt bin rather than toss it onto the ground.
These butt bins are now in 110 spots across the downtown core.
It will be the first municipal recycling program for cigarette butts ever in the world.
What's interesting is now they expanded it to 2,000 units. It started with 100. Now every 20 meters in Vancouver, there's one of these units, and the rate of cigarettes falling on the street have gone down now officially, according to the government, by 99.25%. Less cigarettes on the street, which is almost perfect, almost. It's 0.75% fucked up for some reason. Anyway, hopefully through this you can get a little sense of how we view garbage differently and what's been our entrepreneurial story. We still run our company very transparently, very flat, so we are as entrepreneurial as possible. We have offices here in Budapest on Irányi utca, and we'd love for anyone to come by if you want to learn more about what we do, and please collect waste with us as well. And hopefully this is giving you a small glimpse into how we try to make things that are non-recyclable, recyclable, which is really the first step in eliminating the idea of waste. Thank you. Thanks for your attention. If we can get the lights up, I don't know if that's possible, but I'd love to answer any questions anyone may have. Any questions? Yes?
Thank you. I'm Andras, and my question is, actually I have two questions. One is that you mentioned that there are 300 categories of waste that we need a solution for. And how many categories have you covered so far? with solutions?
It's a good question. We have, there's 300 categories of consumer waste, things that you and I make, and we have now answers for all of those. You can ask me any of them, I'll tell you how we process, whether it's a battery or a dress or whatever. The area that we're now developing from an R&D point of view is industrial types of waste, waste that consumers would never touch, because there's some very strange things from an industrial point of view. Water desalinization filters with General Electric we're now working on, and other examples like that. So the consumer side is done and finished. Now we're focusing R&D on improving to have more sophisticated solutions in the consumer side and to really look at the B2B side and see what comes out. Because like, for example, in a hospital, there's so much crazy amounts of garbage. Everything comes sterilely wrapped. That wrap and everything is used once. It's the most disposable environment for high-end objects I've ever seen. You know, a $300 endocrine surgery tool, you use once and throw it out. And that's not just the tool, the wrapping and everything that goes with it. So that's where we're doing more development. From a consumer point of view, it's all basically solved at this point. Because the trick is not, you know, everyone's creative here. If I said, look, I have 1 million toothbrushes, we could probably come up with some interesting ideas. It's easier than if I said I have garbage and we have to separate out everything. Then it's just impossible to do it. And that's why we burn or bury our garbage. But yeah, so it's now all B2B development is where we're focused. Yes?
So how was your visit to the garbage patch in the ocean? Was it with a ship or?
It was with a ship, yeah. We do some work with Philippe Cousteau, who's Jacques Cousteau's grandson, and he and I did some charity work together. And it wasn't like, you know, because you can't fix it, like at least with today's technology, so we went there to visit. And it was like a publicity thing, you know, so we went on a boat and we were looking at it, and it's pretty horrible. And the problem is that the challenge with garbage is that it's all economics, you know, and no one owns the ocean. So no one cares about the ocean. And today, if you wanted to fix that problem, you're talking trillions of dollars, because it's so thin, small particles, you need very thin, you know, it's like a scoop to pick it up, and it's ridiculously large. And then there's nothing economically possible that's good economically to make from the material. So it has to be a sheer expense. And it's one of those things where I think until like the fish stop, you know, like until we stop, you know, like eating fish because there's no more fish left, that's when people will start thinking about these sort of issues, which is really sad and depressing because there is no good answer for all the garbage that still ends up today in our ocean. Well, the answer is actually don't buy. That is fundamentally the answer, or we all contribute to it. Yes?
You don't seem to have a competitor. There is no global such research. Why do you think is that so?
Yeah, there is no global competitor, and there's two reasons. One is that we're very focused on not having competitors. And the way we do that is the biggest competitor that's possible for us is a large garbage company in the country. Because a large garbage company can create infrastructure fast and could potentially copy our model. So the way we prevent the competition from emerging is we go and we partner with those companies before they become competitors. So in Germany, we just sold 25% of our German business to the third biggest garbage company in Germany, the people who run the Grünepunkt, which is sort of the extended product responsibility program. In Canada, we just sold 20% of our business to the largest garbage company in Canada. We did the same in Brazil. We're now in talks in Australia, France, US for the same type of opportunity. So that's one area. The other, though, is garbage is not a sexy industry. It's the garbage industry. Imagine if you have kids and your children came up to you and said, "Mom and Dad, I want to become a garbage person." You'd probably say, "Nah, you know, think about a doctor, lawyer, but this garbage thing, not so good." And that's one of the reasons it's not an innovative industry. If you look at what garbage companies today do, they move garbage from here, and they put it in a pile here. And that's the business of garbage. It looks at it as a negative. The way to change the point of view is to look at garbage as a complete positive. And there are very few businesses or people that are involved in this. Now there are, you know, companies you may have heard of like Freitag that makes bags out of truck signs. There's even people here in Budapest that take garbage and make products from it. That craft idea, the do-it-yourself idea has been out there. What doesn't exist, so people upcycle. We didn't invent upcycling. What doesn't happen, though, is that people in the upcycling world, just like we did at the beginning, focus on the product. Freitag, for example, focuses on how do you make the best bag, and then considers what type of garbage to use, and uses the best type of garbage they can find. I think the real question is you have to focus on the garbage, and then what can you turn the garbage into? It looks like the same thing, but it's very different where you put the initial focus. So our business question begins with, we need to solve razor blades, not that we want to make a clock and, oh, razor blades make the best clock. So that's been the philosophy, and it's worked quite well for us. But there's tremendous opportunity for people to get involved. It's one of those interesting things where I tell my friends in the garbage business, garbage is a unique industry because it's the only industry in the world that one day takes ownership, actually owns every object in the world. One day, every object will become garbage, and at that moment, the garbage company owns it. What other company in the world takes physical ownership over the world's consumption? No one does. And if you looked at it, it's so much value there. This hit me, when I came from Hungary, because we're not as wealthy here as people in America. I remember with my dad, we were driving in Canada. This was maybe the first year we got to Canada. And we were driving on a Friday, and my dad looks over and he goes, "Why are there 10 television screens in the dumpster there?" Then we go to the next apartment building. There was 5 couches, 12 television screens. And we thought, oh, maybe, we don't understand. Why would people throw out... I didn't even have a television here, because you have to apply for one from the great government. And they, it'd take time before they gave it to you. And we pulled them out. And they worked. And they were color. My God, I'd never even seen color TV before that. And it hit me, that garbage is this massive, massive luxury. And it's amazing how fast we throw things out. I mean, it's phenomenal how... Think about fashion. Especially to the ladies in the audience, how many times have you bought a dress or a shirt or something that you thought was really fashionable, you put it in your closet, 2 years later you pull it out and you say, that's not in fashion anymore, out it goes. It wasn't even worn once. Today if my shirt rips, I don't fix it, no one does that anymore, I go buy a new one. Who here has ever fixed their shoes, and had them put a new sole on the bottom? That used to be how you dealt with your shoes. Has anyone here had their shoes fixed? Put your hand up if you have. Okay, that's not bad, but it's still not everybody, right? And it's probably only for certain shoes. And that's the fundamental challenge right now that we really have to look at. Yes? Sorry, can you speak up?
About logistics, because I can just take the example of cigarettes, like one million cigarettes will be packed away to market. I mean, like logistics behind that, like that you make sure that 1 million packages get sent wherever. I mean, that's massive.
The logistics are massive. Now, what we do is instead of becoming our own logistical company and having our own trucks, we use existing logistics. So here, the cigarettes that we collect are collected through either UPS or Magyar Posta, one or the other. Now, this may perceive to be a lot of transportation, and does this make any environmental sense to ship all this garbage everywhere? And we've done a phenomenal number of life cycle analyses that measure the environmental impact of these systems, and we find that the post offices are very efficient already. Because it's not like they take one truck to send your one little package. The truck is filled with tens of thousands of packages, and then you divide out the cost of the truck, the carbon cost, by the number of packages that the truck is moving, and it becomes very, very efficient. What we have to remember is, if you take this t-shirt that I'm wearing, right? Say that's a cotton t-shirt. The environmental cost of making this t-shirt is primarily 90% turning soil into a plant, turning the plant into woven cotton, and that there is 90% of the impact. It doesn't matter where it was sewn, it's hardly an effect. It doesn't matter how much energy was used to sew it, put color into it, cut it. It's all turning our raw material, or our earth, into cotton. If you have a gold ring on, if you're married and you have maybe a gold wedding band, it takes 2 tons, 2,000 kilos of rock to be taken out of the earth to make enough gold so that you can have your one gold wedding ring. And the big issue from an environmental point of view is not shipping. People always think shipping is a big issue, but actually a funny statistic is that cows produce more global warming gases by their farting than cars do in the whole planet together, by 2-3x. Cows, because the cow fart, methane, is 12 times more destructive from a carbon dioxide point of view than carbon dioxide. It's amazing. People always like it's cars because we see them and we know that they create negative. But if we all stopped eating beef, we would cut down the chance of global warming 3x. Just don't eat beef or meat in general. I mean, these are the things that really we have to focus on, is what are the things that truly create impact. And many times we're voting for these things without being conscious of it. Like, how many people were aware of how bad meat is from an environmental point of view? Forget animal rights and forget your own health. Yes? Go ahead.
You said how many people were aware?
Yeah, how many were? Put your hand up. 1, 2, few? Okay. Not that many, right? So, that's something to reflect on. Realize what you're voting for every time you buy, goulash, or you go and you buy, a pack of chips, or a sugary beverage, or whatever it may be. It's very powerful. Yes?
I think you would be really cheered for this idea in India.
Sure. Yeah, no, absolutely. We're looking at opening in India, actually, in 2 years. One of the challenges with India, though, and this is why we're taking our time, is that it has many fragmented logistical systems. There's not good national logistics in India. But the power, what we're really excited about, is there's this massive group of waste pickers in India. And in Brazil, in our office in Brazil and our office in Argentina, we work with the cartoneros of Latin America, which is the waste pickers. And it's a really interesting segment of the population to work with because many countries don't have that type of waste picking culture. Hungary doesn't have it. You don't have millions of people crawling across landfills picking out things that are valuable. But what's beautiful about the waste picking system is that we work with them by giving them economics on waste streams. We say, oh, you were picking aluminum, but now you can go get toothbrushes, pens, and we'll buy them from you. And that's a great way to create extra jobs, more income, and get even more garbage out of the landfill. So yeah, I mean we have to be careful with India because it's so large, and the fragmented logistics are the big thing we're trying to figure out right now. Yes, sir.
What do you think about the biodegradable plastics?
Biodegradable plastics. Okay, I'll give you my whole story on biodegradable plastics. They're evil. They're horrible. Worst idea ever created.
But also like polylactic acid, which is really biodegradable? Or
yeah. Oh, yeah. Even PLA or any of the forms are horrible. I'll tell you what. Let me give you the whole reason. When you look at the environmental impact, and here's why it's not good, is because people perceive it to be really good, right? Even in how you're asking the question, you're coming from an area of this sounds good, right? That's the perspective it sounds like you have. Now, if you think about biodegradable plastic, how does it begin? It begins as soil. The soil has to convert to a plant. The plant has to convert to a petrochemical, and all of those steps are very environmentally expensive. Farming with fertilizer, land use, the farming technology, very expensive from an environmental point of view. Then converting a plant into a injection moldable plastic is exceptionally expensive from a refining point of view. And then here's the question, you put all this energy to go from the very bottom up to here in sophistication on the material, why then destroy all the energy you invested to go right back to the very bottom? Plant-based plastic is smart if you keep it durable, non-biodegradable. Coca-Cola did this. 30% of their bottles in North America are now made from plant-based plastic. They call it the plant bottle, but it's durable plastic. Because they're scientists, and I know those guys quite well over at Coca-Cola, they said that it was the most insane idea doing biodegradable. Because first, it destroys all the energy. It's not sustainable, just from the manufacturing point of view. And if you converted all the plastic in the world to biodegradable, you would need 7 planets to sustain all that consumption, which means we overconsume. Now the other issue, let's say that that's not even a problem, but it is. On its own, that should be the answer. But then you also have to think about what happens to the product when it becomes garbage. Let's assume this was a biodegradable cup. I give it to you, my gift. What do you do with it? Well, it's in your hand right now. Here, biodegradable cup. Please. What will you now do with it?
I think I'll eBay.
Huh? Okay, okay. But seriously, what would you do with it? Right now, it's in your hand.
My thinking was, when they bury it, I think it will become like soil. So,
No, so when you bury in a landfill, right, which is where you would bury, one of the challenges with landfills is that they do not decompose. Because they're compacted so much that no oxygen gets through, which is one critical requirement for decomposition. And because they're so compact, no light gets through, which is the other critical requirement for decomposition. I have a friend who's a professor in the University of Maryland in the United States who he's a landfill professor, and he extracted banana peels that are 60 years old, newspapers that are 80 years old, that you can still read them, because nothing degrades in a landfill, because there's so much pressure that there's no oxygen and there's no light. So that won't degrade in a landfill. Okay, so now what do you do? Next idea.
Compost, I think.
Okay, do you have a compost pile at home?
No.
Who here has a compost pile at home? How many? Okay, keep your hands up. Whoever has it, please, real high. It's about 5% of the audience has a compost pile at home. So 95% of you are out of luck. You're out of luck, right? But keep your hands, please, keep your hands up. How many of you have a compost pile, and keep your hand up if this is the case, that is so hot that if I put my hand into the middle of it, I would leave with burns on my hand? How many of your compost piles are? 1, maybe, maybe. That's pretty good. But is there anyone else? Did I miss someone? 2 people, okay? You need a compost pile that is over 90 degrees Celsius consistently to break down something so advanced as PLA or polylactic acid or any sort of plant-based polymer. So you cannot do it at home. There's no ability for that to occur. Then, is there a green pickup system here for organic waste in Hungary? No. So there's no government system. And there's nowhere, most countries don't have it anyway. But very few, very wealthy places have it. Like San Francisco has it. It's very rich. Vermont has it, but 1 or 2 cities only. Even America, which is a very wealthy country, doesn't have the infrastructure. And then here's the best part of all. Say you have the infrastructure, like Germany, which does collect green waste. Anyone know the brand Sun Chips by any chance? It's a big American chip brand owned by Frito-Lay. Anyway, it's a $500 million chip brand. And they invested $30 million US in converting their chip bag into a biodegradable PLA-based polymer. Now they pulled the chip bag off the market after 1 year because it was too loud. When you touch it, it was very, very loud because of the way the material goes. Now the story that Pepsi officially put out was that this was pulled off the shelf because kids were playing in it. You know, when the mom or dad was driving around in the supermarket with the trolley, they were playing with the bag and they were driving their parents crazy. And because of that, they pulled the bag. The truth is, actually, the president of Pepsi told me this when we were having dinner one day. He goes, no, the truth isn't that. The truth was that people many times have habits of snacking in the middle of the night, like at 3 a.m. And the husband would go down to the kitchen, take out the chip bag at 3 a.m. without his wife knowing, and it was so loud that his wife found out. And they got so many complaints about this issue, that's why they pulled it off. But here's the issue. I ended up with 500,000 pounds, 250,000 kilos of PLA, pure, untouched, the best stuff, right? We called every composting facility in North America, Canada and the US, all of them. No one would accept it. Then we said, well, fuck that. We'll pay $250,000. Would someone then take it and compost it? Nobody would take it because they said it was a contaminant to compost. You said you have a great compost pile, right? Right there. Okay, let's say good. What makes good compost? What do you like the most to put in? No, but like input. No, more like physical, like coffee or meat. Like what is the stuff that's the best? What do you like to put into it?
We put institutional waste.
Okay, like food waste.
University campuses.
Yeah, but each waste is different, right? If you process in your compost pile, like coffee grounds, that makes the compost really good. You process vegetable peels, very good. You put meat into that, not so good, right? PLA, sorry?
It's mixed.
No, I know, but if you had the choice, right? One is better, both can go in, but one is better than the other. PLA is the worst. It's a contaminant. It makes the compost less effective. So you have these two fundamental issues in biodegradable plastic. How is the product made? It's very inefficient. And then how is it disposed? There is no infrastructure anyway. It won't biodegrade in the landfill. You put it in a recycling bin, it will contaminate the recycling. And the composters don't want it anyway. So the answer isn't biodegradability. The answer is better systems to maintain materials in their highest end form, instead of breaking them all the way down to the lowest end form. That's why even in our business, we look at first reuse, then upcycling, and then recycling at the very end. I'll take one more question, and then I'll wrap up. Please.
I was wondering if you ever heard about a Japanese professor who extracts cellulose out of food waste and makes plastic out of it.
Yes, and actually I am aware, and we just opened our office in Tokyo 2 months ago. We launched TerraCycle Japan in 3 weeks, on April 17th. We have a big press conference there. And there's a lot of, there's a lot of interesting ways to create these plant-based materials. Again, I think it's really smart, but as long as it maintains durability. The issue is trying to make the material degrade. That's the big challenge. So it's not that plant-based plastic is bad. Biodegradable or degradable plant-based plastic is what is bad. Now, the other thing, you'll hear in the garbage in Japan has a lot of work on this, is converting garbage into fuel, into biodiesel or petrol equivalents, and then burning it in an engine or something. And that, again, is a challenge only because when you burn garbage, you only recover the value of its oil value at the very beginning. You don't get all the energy that you put into converting it into a cup and all these higher-end things back. And the big challenge in this whole idea of burning, and Japan's a good example where 70% of the garbage is burned, is that what burns the best? Because you can burn at positive caloric value where you get energy back, or you can burn at negative caloric value where you put energy in but you get less back. Food, for example, or wet material, shampoo, things like that, burn at negative energy value. The things that burn at the very best energy value, ironically, are the things that are the most recyclable. Good example, in Sweden, the Swedish government just paid for, 6 months ago, €500 million to build a big incineration facility for Sweden. What's happening now, because you have to run the incineration facility always at a pace, is the Swedish government is now buying soda bottles from recycling centers that have already put them perfectly out to feed the incinerator. It's very, very dangerous because you have to keep these systems going, and the things that are the best to burn are also the things we should be recycling. So it's something to, to be aware of as you participate as a consumer in these systems. So thank you, by the way, so much for your attention and your time. I really hope that you have a good evening, and hopefully you leave here with just a little bit of a different point of view on what is garbage. Thank you.